صل على محمد. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدي ومولاي سيد المرسلين، وصلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك وعلى جدك وأبيك، صلى الله عليك وعلى أمك وأخيك، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم جميع شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ جاءتكم جنود فأرسلنا عليهم ريحا وجنودا لم تروها وكان الله بما تعملون بصيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First and foremost, I'd like to just state that in these nights that we are together, it is my hope that we will go over as much of these verses of Surah Al-Ahzab as we can in order to take benefit from these verses. As the Quran in itself is so deep and beautiful, and there's much we can learn from it, I'll try to be as concise as I can. I know the last few nights we were going over a little bit, but the Quran is not a book that you can simply digest in one sitting, not even 10 sittings, not even in a lifetime. But I'll try to be as concise as possible, and I just encourage all of you that to read the Quran, as Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasallam, he has encouraged us to read the Quran at least 50 verses a day. This would be an idea, but if not, read the Quran outside of your salat. Of course, we read the Quran in our salat, but pick up the Quran, even if we read one verse, and we benefit from the Quran. But we should have a habit that every day, if we can't do it every day, every week, read something from the Quran and understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's communication to us. This book that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed is a book of prescriptions. That for every illness that mankind has, this book has a prescription for it, a cure. But we must read that book. We must read the Quran in order to benefit from the Quran, in order to correct ourselves, in order to move forward. And in fact, as our mentioning of the Quran since the beginning of our majalis, we've been doing a prescriptive reading. But a prescription for what? For our ummah, for our jama'ah, for our communities. And that is to understand how we are to build faith, strengthen our iman, and through strengthening our iman, we strengthen our communities. So this is a prescriptive reading of the Quran, looking for a prescription. And thus far, we've given 3 prescriptions that we can use in order to build our own faith and also to build our community and strengthen our community. The first is simply to have faith, to have belief and faith. And that belief and faith is Islam wa Iman. Islam, as we mentioned, is all of the apparent actions of Islam. Our prayer, our fasting, Hajj, Zakat, Khums, that we are practicing these things. And the Iman is based upon the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt. And to understand those actions, the Salat, the fasting, through the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, understand how they have presented it. Not to bring some idea from our own pockets and say that, oh, well, this is what Islam. No, our following of Islam is through Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. The second prescription is to be a true community. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He addresses us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. O you who believe, that you believe together, that you practice your faith together. And the prescription was Salatul Jama'ah. As much as possible, try to participate in the Jama'ah prayers. Because by participating in the Jama'ah prayers, it fortifies your iman on a personal level, but also your community, that you're praying together. You're worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together. You're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together. You're reminding one another to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it will strengthen your community. The third prescription, that's why that we spoke about, is to have fear only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not fear anything except for Allah. And we explained that fear. There is not a fear that Allah is going to destroy us, but it is a fear that we ourselves may allow ourselves to become so loose that we sever ourselves from the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear that we may do something that we disconnect from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Imam Sadiq, he stated that perhaps we've done that perhaps in the past we've done something, a sin, and we don't know how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has treated us. Has He forgiven us or not? And we don't know if we may fall into some pitfall in the future that may also disconnect us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Sadiq says, so the believer, the mu'min, he lives in that fear. And it's that fear that keeps him on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That fear that fortifies his iman. So that in the face of any difficulty, he has no fear. Why? Because he fears only Allah. And when you fear Allah, everything fears you. In these verses of Surah Al-Ahzab, as we mentioned, that when the army was amassed and it was coming for the Prophet and the believers, some, they begin to fear. To the point that, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that زَاغَتِ الْقُلُوبِ إِلَى الْحَنَاجِرَ, that their hearts, their souls came up to their throat. They found it difficult to breathe. That they began to stare in fear at the large army that had amassed against them. That was in verse 10 of Surah Al-Ahzab. In verse 11, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and again, here we are looking for a prescription. So the prescription we get from verse 11 is this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. He says, in this manner, as He has spoken about thus far, from verse 9 of Surah Al-Ahzab, the army is coming, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has definitely given His blessing on you. Remember this. One of the blessings came before. He says, when this army is amassed, some people they become afraid that there's something coming from them. There's something that they cannot even fathom, that how are we going to survive this? Then Allah says, هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. In this manner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tests the believer. The prescription that we need to gain from this verse is in this word, al-ibtila. هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Al-ibtila, or the root of it, balwa, or perhaps we also know the word by one of this other form, bala. That bala, often we think that, bala, when we think, it's a calamity. This person has fallen into some sort of difficulty. So we need to truly understand what is the meaning of bala. What is the meaning of balwa? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that هُنَالِكَ أُبْتِلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. That the believers are tested. And particularly in this situation, a very difficult situation, Allah says this is your test. There's another word that quite often we know as a test. And just to prove this, go back, read the Quran, actually read the translations of the Quran, verse 11 of Surah Al-Ahzab. Also other verses that uses this word bala is translated as they are tried, the believers are tested, or even in Urdu, it is imtihan le gaya, or azmaye gaye. All of it, imtihan, test. Likewise, there's another word that's used in the Quran, fitna. And likewise, it's translated as they're tried, they're tested. Likewise, in Urdu, they use the same word, azmayish gaya, azmaye le gaya, imtihan le gaya. Same thing, tested. So are these two words the same? Is a bala, the test of a bala, is it the same as fitna? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, just to give you one example, He says in the Quran, Surah Al-Ankabut, verse 2, He says, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسِ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people assume that they will be left to say that I believe, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, and they will not be tested, they will not be tried, their faith will not be put to the test to see whether they are truthful or not? No, they will be tested. But we need to be very clear, as I mentioned before, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every word that He uses in the Quran is very precise. Why in one place He says ibtila, bala, and why in one place He says fitna? The difference is that bala and ibtila is a general test. And this test that is a bala, it can be with something that's good. You can be tested by something that's good. Or you can be tested with something that is difficult. You test it with a ni'mah, a blessing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you a blessing, and He tests you with that blessing. This is ibtila. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does something, or for example, he puts you in a situation because of your sin. That you've sinned, you haven't repented from the sin, and so therefore you are tested with a niqmah, with a calamity. And to some extent, it is there in order to make amends and to purge you from that wrongdoing. And we have this in Dua Kamal. If you recite Dua Kamal, there's in the very beginning of Dua Kamal, Allahumma ghfir li adh-dhunub allati tunzilu niqam. That, oh Allah, forgive me for those sins, that because of those sins, tunzilu niqam, that you send upon me a punishment. That I've done something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and subhanAllah, even that punishment, based on the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, if that punishment is in this dunya, it is better. That Allah, we've done something, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes for it. Meaning we become worthy of punishment. And so He punishes you in this dunya rather than in the akhirah. And this is taught in the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. So, well, person, he broke his leg, he fell, he was in an accident. And these things, at time, according to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afwa salatu, says, well, that was a purgatory, or that was in recompense of a sin. So therefore, since this has happened to you in this world, in the next world, you will not be held accountable for that sin. But of course, the best thing is not to even sin in the first place. And to immediately ask for repentance. Allahumma ghfir li adh-dhunub allati tunzilu an-niqam. That Allah, save me from that sin that brings your wrath upon me. So a niqmah, this wrath or this punishment, is also al-bala, part of your test in this world. Al-bala, this test, also covers fitna. So we can say, because bala is something that's very general. Good or bad, or even fitna. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He alludes to this in Surah Al-A'raf, chapter 7 of the Quran, verse 168. When you read it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَتَعْنَاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أُمَمًا مِنْهُمَ الصَّالِحُونَ وَمِنْهُمْ دُونَ ذَلِكَ وَبَلَوْنَاهُمْ بِالْحَسَنَاتِ وَالسَّيِّئَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. He says, and we have sent forth these nations in different parts of the world. Some of them are salihun, some of them are righteous people, and some of them are not righteous people. Duna dhalik, meaning that they are involved in corruption and calamities, they're involved in corruption. Then he says, وَبَلَوْنَاهُمْ, the same word, balwa, and we tested them, we tried them, we afflicted them. Balwa sometimes is also translated as afflict. We tested them bil hasanat. We tested them with things that are good. وَالسَّيِّئَاتِ, and things which were bad, things which were difficult. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ, that perhaps they may return. They may return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They may return to that pure state in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created them upon. So that is what balwa is. It's a general test. It could be a test of good, it can be a test of bad. For example, someone can be tested, and each person has a test, even the prophets. This is darul bala. This world, darul bala. The abode of being tested. In the hereafter, there's no test. We give our tests here, and we reap the results in the hereafter. And every individual has his or her test. Every single individual. One person may be inclined to money, wealth. One person may be inclined to music, may be inclined to whatever, watching television, anything. And these things are not always bad things. A person could be inclined to prayer. To give you an example, a person is inclined to prayer, but then he neglects everything else. The path of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam is a path of balance. Even so much so that the Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, "Man taraka dunyahu li akhiratihi falaysa minni." Whoever leaves his dunya only for akhirah, meaning that he prays and he doesn't do anything but pray, and he has to wait and people have to come and to give him. So he says, that person is not from me. But if he balances between his prayer, his ibadah, and also seeking his livelihood, then this is the balance. Because in seeking that livelihood, it in itself is ibadah. It's ibadah in itself. Whether we seek our livelihood as a teacher, as an engineer, as a doctor, whatever, as someone who is educating the community, these are all means of livelihood. So we do not take one over the other, nor do we leave our akhirah for the dunya. That we become so engaged in the dunya, at work, I don't have time to pray. I'll make my qadha all the time. Or just leave salat altogether. No, this is not the way of Ahlul Bayt. So each and every individual has his or her test. In addition to our individual tests, we have a test as a ummah, as a community. For an example, a person may be wealthy, has money, but he doesn't have good health. No matter what he does, he goes to every doctor, this doctor, no one can cure him. So he has money, he's wealthy, but he doesn't have good health. So on one hand, he's being tested with khair, with the good, because he has money. And what does he do with his money? Is he spending his money fi sabilillah, in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is he spending his money on things which are forbidden? That's one test for him. But it's a test with a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something that is good. On the other hand, he's sick, he's ill, and of course he may perceive it as something that's bad. Oh, well, because I'm sick, then I can't do this or I can't do that. But he's being tested with that. Is he patient and he deals with that? Or is it that this thing which he perceives as something bad health, does it take him away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's one person's test. Another person's test may be totally opposite. That he's poor, but has good health. Doesn't have money, but he has good health. So what does he do with his health? Does he sit and he complain, I can never get a job, the economy is bad. Don't have enough money to move to another state, even to get a job, but he has good health. So how do we deal with these tests? And first of all, one of the things with this test, subhanAllah, that we have to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants everyone to pass the test. He wants everyone to pass this test and to return to Him in the most purest of states. This is one reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that He never tries a soul except for what it has capacity for. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. That no soul is tested or tried except for that which he or she has the ability to deal with. But quite often, we do not perceive this. We may see the test before us, and we will act like the believers or some of the people who reacted when they saw the Ahzab, when they saw their army coming, and they become afraid. Or they put down their arms, or they throw up their arms, what am I going to do with this? That's nothing I try works. But it is our responsibility to try, to make effort. Again, and I'm saying this particularly because as Shia, we're not fatalists. And some of the Western academics, they say, oh, well, Shias are fatalists. What do you mean by fatalists? That they believe, oh, at the end of the time, there's going to be this great calamity, what I made it allusion to yesterday, that there's going to be killing and this and that, and no one's going to be spared. Only a few people will be spared, and those who follow the walayat of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But also this idea of fatalism, it also has a notion that because this fate has been determined, then one doesn't do actions, one doesn't act. He just sits back and, okay, well, this is bound to happen. One example, and this is one of the reasons why we're here, is to talk about or discuss the shahadat of Imam Husain and the remembrance of that shahada of him and his companions. That from even the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that it was prophesied that Imam Husain would be martyred in Karbala. The Prophet knew this. The Prophet spoke about it. Many riwayat. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, he spoke about. Fatima Zahra spoke about. Imam al-Hasan spoke about it. So now, after the martyrdom of these members of the Ahl Kisa, and the only one left is Imam Husain, so the question is that does he go forth? He already knows. It's been prophesied. And many things that the Prophet has prophesied already came to pass. And he knew that, yes, the Prophet is truthful. This is going to happen. So at that point, does he go forth to Karbala and not make any effort that, oh, well, this is going to happen, so there's nothing else I can do. My fate has been sealed. Allah, you're not allowing me to do anything. Does he go forth with that mindset? Or does he go forth and understand that this is a test? That perhaps, yes, in it there's some difficulty if you look at it only from a worldly perspective. I'm going to die. My family's going to die. My beloved brother, Abbas, he's going to die. My beloved son is going to die. The only individual, when I look upon him, when I speak to him, that he reminds me of my grandfather, Rasulullah. So that you go forth and say that, well, fate is sealed, what can we do? Or does Imam Husain alayhi wasallam go forth understanding that this is a test? That one, he must fulfill, and along this, giving this test, and part of that test is to make sure and to ensure that the remembrance of that day and the reason for which he stood up would continue forever. He went forth knowing that this is his test. He went forth taking his family, the women and children, even the brother of Imam Husain, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, he said, okay, Husain, yes, I know, yes, our father Ali, our grandfather Muhammad, alayhi wa salatu salam, they said that this will happen. They said that this will happen. But when you go, he says, just leave the women and children behind. This is my only request from you, brother. But Imam Husain, he says, no, he took them. Because he knew, but by taking the women and children, that this message will live on forever and ever until Imam Zaman Ajlan Farajul Sharif. That is one way in understanding your test, because this is our objective. That if we are to build our iman, and if we are to strengthen our community, then we have to understand the test that is at hand. What is my test as an individual in order to strengthen my faith? Do I like coffee too much? And I drink too much coffee and it gets me wired and I can't focus, I can't concentrate? Do I like working too much that I can't make my salat on time? I can't spend time with my family, which is also part of your ibadah. Oh, I have to send my son he has to go to Princeton. And so I have to work, at least 18 hours out the day. Oh, I don't have time to see him, but hey, he's going to go to the best university. And in the meantime, what happens to his iman? Well, at least, he has the name of Ali or Muhammad, and that will carry him. But he's going to go and he's going to become a brain surgeon. But then what happens to his iman? Because I wasn't there. I wasn't ensuring that I'm spending time with my family. I'm being the best example for my family as I can, as Imam Husain was for his family, as Imam Ali was for his family. Am I ensuring that, yes, when they go to the majalis, that they are benefiting from the majalis? Or even that they're understanding the majalis? That they understand who our imams are, that they understand what the Quran is, that they benefit from the Quran. Am I ensuring this? Or am I too busy doing other things and, their dunya will be set, but we forgot their akhirah? Islam is about finding that balance. The Quran doesn't say, leave your dunya only for akhirah, or leave your akhirah for dunya. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. That Allah give me the best of this world and the best of the hereafter. So quite a bit of our tests on a personal level, and also on a level of family, is to find that balance. How is it that I can have the best of this world and the hereafter? How is it that I can strengthen my iman, strengthen the iman of my family? How is it that I can strengthen my community? Allah tests us. We have to understand the tests. One of these tests, and I'll mention it, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He says in the Quran, He tests you with good and bad. Good, and of course, the believer, he sees it as all good. This is why Zainab, salamullah alayha, when she was asked that, how do you see what happened to your brother in Karbala? She says, Ma ra'aytu illa khayra. I didn't see anything but good. This is the vision of the believer. Even if it's something that's difficult, they say, no, this is good. Why? Because they see the good in it. Because they know that that test that they're being given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the purpose for that is to increase their iman. That the purpose for that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to raise and elevate their level. So this is why they say, oh, no, there's nothing bad in that. There's only good in it. That's because they understood the good in it. Other people, they will see it and they say, oh, well, this thing is bad. Or why did this happen? And I'll give you a very practical and a very relevant example. That, of course, I understand a few things about the Long Island community. That for years you had a house. That before you built this center, this masjid, you were doing your programs out of a house. And in the back of the house, there was a pit. There was a hole. Perhaps you, again, I guess you have to make the assessment. Perhaps you were thinking, oh, well, we don't have the funds, we don't have the money to start building, or there's this complication, there's that, so many different obstacles in your way that, oh, we're not moving forward, we'll just keep our pit and we'll have our house. Until what happens? The house burns. And when you look at it from outside, oh, this is something that's bad. No, it wasn't something bad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted you to move forth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted you to build something better for yourselves, better for your community. So therefore, it had to come through something that looked like a tragedy, and that was the burning of the house. Once it burned, now we definitely have to build now. Those who may have been for it or against it or had some doubt, well, hey, there's no choice now, the building is burnt. Let's move forward and build it. This was a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in perhaps the disguise of some sort of calamity. But the believer, he would look at it, oh, mashallah, there's something good in this. It's a difficulty, but there's something good in it. Then you reach to a point that, the city says, well, wow, you have this huge tree here. You have this historic and ancient tree that's been in Long Island for so long, and it's on your property, right where you want to do part of your building. So now, in order to begin to build, you got to pay lots of money. Of course, I know that we have lots of trees in Austin, and they charge your arm and leg just to remove a tree. A couple of thousands of dollars. Oh, well, this tree is this big in diameter, so that's about $40,000 you have to pay to the city. It's not a lot for a tree. So you come across this same thing. That here's this huge tree that's preventing you from building because now you have to pay money. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, He gives His blessing to you. And this is what He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dhkuru ni'matullah. That remember the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happens to the tree? Lightning storm comes, and the same tree that its very being and existence depends upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, move this out of the way. Lightning strikes it. At that point, it's no longer a tree. You don't have to pay any fine. Build the center, Shah-e-Najaf. This is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, but again, in this blessing, there's still a trial. There's still a bala, there's still a test. And that is a test with this blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you. And that test is one, and I will mention this, is in the fortification of your community. That perhaps, and sometimes this happens, in a lot of communities this happens, and I don't know whether it's happening here or not, but I'm just going over because I've traveled many places, and a lot of communities this happens. That when they're in a very humble place, that, oh, wow, we have a small building, very humble beginnings, everybody's working to be together. Oh, mashallah, mashallah. Simply because we have something. Mashallah. But then, as soon as, hey, we need to start building, and then building plans go up, then there's differences. Oh, we want the building this way. We want it like that. It should look this way. We should look that way. Oh, if it doesn't look this way, I'm not coming in again. Oh, who says this and who says that? Who calls the adhan here and who does? If I don't call it, I'm not coming again. But subhanAllah, when the building was small, no, brother, mashallah, you go for it. You make the adhan. Mashallah, mashallah. As soon as we begin to expand, everyone wants to come forth. This is your test, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is giving you this blessing, this ni'mah. What are you going to do with it? Perhaps in a small building, oh, hey, we have kids that are coming up, or maybe there were no kids, I don't know. But Allah knew, okay, well, the community is going to grow. We're going to have a lot of kids now. And so this place needs to accommodate the kids as well. Not only in a space to sit, to listen, but in a space to learn and to understand. That we have to ensure that they are understanding the Quran, understanding the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. Whether at times, yes, we may have to make changes or not. Oh, okay, well, MashaAllah, okay, let's give them some English. They understand English better than Urdu. Or, hey, let's teach them Urdu. Let's teach them how to read and write to improve their Urdu. But again, have the balance. These young children, these youth, these young adults, they will be interacting with the society here. And of course, as we know from the Sirat, the life of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, that we know according to the life of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, wherever they went, they were the best example for mankind. Inshallah, in a few days, that's in this point, because we're in Safar, that we will be speaking about Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, as his shahada is soon. But Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, when he went to Khurasan, this is in Persia. Now tell me, the majority of people, they speak Arabic at that time there, or did they speak Farsi? They spoke Farsi. So how did the Imam communicate with them? We know for a fact, and it's in the riwayat, that the Imam spoke the language of those individuals. He spoke the language of those who came to him. This is not to say that the Imam didn't know other languages. Yes, he knew other languages. His mother tongue was Arabic. He spoke his mother tongue. He read his, but he spoke the language of the people that he was with. And this is the same thing that we have to prepare for our kids. Many kids, mashallah, alhamdulillah, yesterday was beautiful. Our youth, that they were doing the latmiyas and they were doing the marsiyas. Even some of them, I saw they're reading the Urdu from the English alphabet. Why not teach them the Urdu alphabet? Teach them Arabic? Yes. They should be polyglots, meaning having more than one language. Read the Urdu, read the Arabic, understand it as best they can. Read the English and understand English. One benefit of that is that they will be able to convey the message to others. And this is, subhanAllah, this is one of our tests. Again, another test that we have, not only as an individual, but as a community. That why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you, myself, to be here, in this place, in America, with the belief of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah Aliyun Waliyullah? Is it simply to keep this precious gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ourselves and not to share it? Or is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this precious gift so that we can share it, so that others may understand the truth, so that others may find their way back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's definitely the second. And I'll give you one example during the time of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. One of the well-known students of Imam Sadiq by the name of Zurara, he said once he was sitting with Imam Sadiq in Medina, and one man, he came in to visit Imam Sadiq. This person was from Baghdad. And it just so happens that there was a lot of rain that was coming down in Baghdad. So much so that the news was that the Euphrates is going to overflow. So this individual came, he asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he told him what was going on, the Euphrates. He says, pray for me, that everything will be okay. Of course, his intentions was his property and everything. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, fine. He left. And as he left, Zurara said, Imam Sadiq, he raised his hands. He says, oh Allah, protect this man's wealth, protect this land, make sure that nothing, not one drop of water affects this person's land, so that he will stay where he's at and he will be there at ease. A second person came, also from Baghdad, and he asked Imam Sadiq, he told Imam Sadiq the same thing. No, the Euphrates may overflow because of the rain, the abundant rains. But, pray for my well-being. Pray for that everything will be okay. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says, fine. This person left. When he left, Imam Sadiq, he raised his hands. He says, oh Allah, make the Euphrates flow over, rise and flow over, and destroy this person's property. So much so that he cannot continue, he cannot go back to this home. And he has to move to another place, to another city. So at this point in Zurara, he looked at Imam Sadiq, he says, Ya bin Rasulullah. He says, what type of dua is this? These both individuals came to you and they asked for your prayers that their places will be okay. For the first, you prayed that everything is fine, and the second, you prayed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroys his home with the flood. He says, what is the meaning of this, Ibn Rasul? Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, this first individual who came in, he says, Laysa min shi'atina. He's not from among our followers. And in fact, his aqidah, his belief, is somewhat distorted. So I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep him in place, that he does not spread the wrong message. He says, the second individual who came to me, asking for dua, he says, وَهَذَا مِنْ شِيَعَتِنَا. That this individual, he is from among our followers. Not only is he from among our followers, he understands the Quran and he understands our riwayat, and his faith is strong. So I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take him from that place where he's at, to send him to another city. And in that city, he will spread the message, the true message of the Quran, and the true message and the teachings of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. So our coming here is not for any purpose. We must understand the purpose. Wherever we were, if it was on the west coast of America, if it was across the seas, our coming together here as believers, as those who believe in La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, Aliyun, it's not, as I say in Arabic, sudfa. It's not a chance. But it is a test for us. And we have to understand that test. The ushering of the caravan of Imam Husain, Zainab al-Kubra, from one place to another, it was for a purpose, to spread the message of Karbala. And this is why these bala, or what appears to be calamities or tragedies, in the words of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, these are zinatul mu'min wa karamatun liman aqala. He says, this is the ornament of the believer, these apparent tragedies. And it is a trait of nobility for that individual who reflects and who contemplates that calamity, that test, that trial. Because by interacting with this trial as that individual should, by being patient and doing his or her responsibility, says, at the end of it, their iman will increase. Their closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase. And for no moment take that tragedy or that calamity or that test as something bad. The believer should always see it as good, whatever it is. And look for what the blessing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds in store for us afterwards. Be patient on that trial. Be patient on that test. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will take you through. Imam Sadiq, again, last right, because I know the time is going. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. In order that we fully understand this prescription, that we should understand our tests as an individual, understand our tests as a community, so that we may deal with that test, see the good in it, increase and strengthen our iman, strengthen our community. Don't allow that once we've grown, that little small things begin to break us up. No, subhanAllah, our test is to stay strong. Our test is to be a symbol for Ahlul Bayt. Imam Sadiq, he says, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that individual who comes forth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala complaining about the trials that he had in this world, saying that, Ya Allah, that I had a difficult trial in this world, and because of my trial, I lost the way. I fell into fitna, the fitna that takes you away from your path. Imam Sadiq says, when this happens, then he will bring forth Ayub, the prophet Ayub. And he will say, "Oh my servant, you claim that you were tested and you were tried. Here, do you see this one, Ayub? Was your test more difficult than his? Was your trial more difficult than that of Ayub?" But he did not lose the way. He stayed firm and steadfast. And today, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, I have one question, that whatever trial, whatever difficulties we have gone through, tell me, has our difficulties been more difficult than that of Imam Zain al-Abidin? Has it been more difficult than that of Imam Zain al-Abidin, that when he went to Damascus? And it's well known that when Imam Zain al-Abidin, he was asked that, what was the most difficult point of this journey? SubhanAllah. Imam Zain al-Abidin, he did not say that it was Karbala. To watch as the companions of Imam Husain fell to the great plains of Karbala one by one. He didn't say that this was the most difficult point. He did not say that the most difficult point of this journey was when his father stood alone on the plains of Karbala and he called out for help. And Imam Zain al-Abidin, in his state of sickness, he stood up and said he would come help, but his father says, no, that you cannot come, because if you come, then there will be no Imam after me. He didn't say that this was the most difficult point. Imam Zain al-Abidin, he didn't even respond that the most difficult point in the journey was when he saw the head of his father raised upon the spear. He did not say that the most difficult moment was when he saw his young 6-month-old baby brother, his head also raised upon the spear. But he would reply that the most difficult moment was Asham, that in Damascus, this was the most difficult moment for the Imam Zain al-Abidin. But why was this the most difficult moment for Imam Zain al-Abidin? This is because of the state of Sham. That at least in Kufa, some of the people they knew, most of the people they knew who the Ahlul Bayt were, because Imam Ali, he had made his capital in Kufa. But in Sham, most of the people were under the deception of Yazid, so that when Imam Zain al-Abidin and the caravan, they came into Damascus, some of the people, they were having parties and they were cheering, saying that Yazid, that he had destroyed the enemies of Islam. They did not know that it was the Ahlul Bayt that had been killed. This is why Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says the most difficult place was Asham. One of the companions of Rasulullah by the name of Sahl ibn Sa'ad, he describes the moment when the caravan was being brought into Sham and Damascus. He said that he was on his way to Philistine. He was on his way to Bayt al-Muqaddas, but he was going through Damascus. He says, and when he reached Damascus, he saw that it was a strange state, that in Damascus, some people were beating drums and partying. Some people were sad. And when he saw this state, he didn't know that what was going on. Is today an Eid or is today something sad? What has happened in Damascus? So Sahl ibn Sa'ad is stated that he went forth and he saw those individuals who were crying and he asked them, he says, Ma hadha hal fi Damashq, ma hadha hal fi Sham, that what is the state in Sham? هل عندكم عيد لا أعرفه, that do you have some Eid that I don't know about? And this individual, one individual, he responded to Sahel. He says, Ya Shaykh, أنت الغريب من أنت? He says, you are a strange person around here. You're not from the city. Who are you? Sahl said, أنا سهل ibn Sa'ad. أنا رأيت رسول الله. That I am Sahl ibn Sa'ad. I am someone who has saw Rasulullah in his time. Tell me that what is this? Is this not an Eid? I don't remember this Eid during the time of Rasulullah. So what is this? And the individual, he responded to Sahal. He says, أما عجبت أن اليوم لم يمطر الدماء. Do you not think that it's not strange that on this day that the sky is not raining blood? أما عجبت أن هذا اليوم لم تسقط السماء على الأرض. Are you not surprised that on this day that the heaven has not come crashing down upon the earth? And Sahl ibn Sa'ad, he says, لماذا هذا الكلام? That why are you stating this? And then the individual, he says, on this day, اليوم هذا رأس الحسين يحدى من العراق. He says, look, this is the head of Husain that is being ushered in from Iraq. هذا رأس الحسين مرملا بالدماء. This is the head of Husain that is being ushered into Damascus on a spear, and this head is full of blood. This head was full of blood because it said that when Imam Husain, when his throat was bleeding, that after the arrow had punctured his throat, that Imam Husain, he grabbed the blood in his hand and he wiped it upon his beard and he wiped it upon his face. So this head of Husain, it was full of blood upon his spear being ushered into Damascus. And when Sahl ibn Sa'ad, when he saw this state, he began to cry. He began to cry, Wa Muhammad, Wa Husayna. The Sahl ibn Sa'ad, he went forth to the caravan and says he saw the caravans, the heads being ushered in, and the women and children in chains. He saw this one girl and he went to her. He says, Ya Amati, the old servant of Allah, Man Anti, who are you? And this young girl, she responded, she said, Ana Sukaina. Ana Sukaina binti Husain ibn Ali. She said, I am Sukaina, the daughter of Husain, the son of Ali. I am Sukaina. So this individual, he told Sukaina, Ya Sukaina, Ana Sahl ibn Sa'ad wa ra'aytu jaddaka Rasulullah. I am Sahl ibn Sa'ad. I am one who saw your grandfather Rasulullah. Hal ladayka haja uqadhiha lak. Do you have any need? Do you have any request from me that I can fulfill just for the sake of your grandfather Rasulullah? Then Sukaina, she looked at Sahl. She said, Ya Abdullah, O servant of Allah, tell these men to take the heads of my father, take take the head of my brother, take the head of my uncle, to take them before us, so that people are not looking upon our heads. So Salim ibn Sa'd, he said he went forth and he gave the soldiers some gold coins that they would just take the heads of Imam Husain and Abbas, take them before the caravan, so that the people of Damascus, they would not look upon the haram, they would not look at the women of Rasulullah. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا وأي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذه المجلس الحسينية اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وارحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه بحق محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. ماتم حسين.
Oh Ali, what has now happened? Where are you, my